There's lots of different types of guitar amplifiers, and in this video I'm going to introduce you to just a few of them. I'll also show you how to set them up to get a really good guitar sound. In general, we differentiate between the amplifier, which is also called the head, and the loudspeaker, which I have here. It's a 100 watt tube amplifier and a 4x12 inch cabinet, which means there are 4 12-inch loudspeakers in it. These are classic rock and roll utensils. You can also use smaller setups. Here we have a combo amp. That means that it's a combination of an amplifier and speakers. This one has a single 12-inch speaker inside, which is a lot more handy and portable, but it is also, of course, a bit quieter. You should find it still loud enough for stage use, though. And here I have my practice amplifier that I use at home. This is a modelling combo amp with digital technology. So let's start with the gaffer here, which is the Marshall 100 watt top. What we have here is a classic single-channel guitar amplifier, and this means that no different sounds can be created when nothing is switched on here. The sound is regulated by the elements on the control panel. The amplifier is switched on with these two switches here, with mains being the main power switch. The lamp lights up when you turn it on. With standby, you can protect the tubes. This means it'll extend their lifespan. Even if you turn on the amp completely, always turn on mains first. Then wait about 30 seconds for the tubes to warm up, and then move the standby switch down, and then the amp's ready to go. Now, a very important point. You must always have a loudspeaker box connected to a tube amplifier. If you don't, the load resistance is missing, and the tube amplifier can become damaged. So always make sure that the speaker is connected to the correct output. However, there are 4 different inputs, which I'll show you now. They are, up here, we have input 1 upper, which sounds like this. And if I go to input 1 lower, then we have a bit less input level, and that means that it distorts less. Then we have input 2, which sounds a bit muffled. Again, here we find that the lower input provides a little less input level. The whole thing is set with a 4-band tone control, which consists of presence, bass, middle, and treble. Presence is responsible for the very high frequencies. I'll start by turning it all the way down. I'll show you my favourite setting. The first one, bass, is where you regulate the low frequencies. So I've left this in the 12 o'clock position. Middle, which is where you set the mid frequencies. So I like to leave that one in the 2 o'clock position, and treble for the high frequencies. With this input, I like to reduce the amount of treble. That's because the sound of this input already has a lot of high frequencies when you compare it to the others. There are 2 volume controls here, which are labelled loudness 1 for the first input, and loudness 2 for the second input. And when I turn the loudness 2 knob, nothing happens at first because I'm not plugged into the second input. If I want to set up a clean sound, which means no distortion, then I have to turn down the volume relatively far. For distorted sounds, I have to turn the volume up. So this is the problem with 100 watt amplifiers at high volume settings. Yes, you get a decent sound pressure, but it's not well suited for use in the home, because the loud volume can cause big problems with your neighbours, and it can also cause problems in the rehearsal room when you have bandmates who don't play quite so loud. That's why at a certain point in time, amplifiers with master volume knobs were developed, so that you can have a controllable final volume level separate from the loudness knob, which is responsible for the distortion level. Let's take a look at this now. So what we have here is an example of a modern tube amp design. It's an amplifier with 3 channels. It has a dedicated clean channel for undistorted sounds. Or I can switch to the crunch channel if I want slightly distorted sounds. And for the really distorted sounds, we have the lead channel. Each one of the channels can be changed in tone. For example, on the clean channel, we have treble, middle, bass and presence controls, as well as a volume knob for controlling the volume of that channel. For the crunch channel, we also have treble, middle, bass, and gain for the distortion level, and also a volume knob for controlling the volume of this channel, and the same for the lead channel. Then over here we have another presence knob, a boost knob. You can use this to add even more volume but without adding any more distortion. And finally we have the master volume knob, and we use this to control the main volume of the entire amplifier. So here we have a typical modelling amp setup. This is what I use to practice at home. The tube amp I use in the studio or on the stage because I can turn it up really loud. Unfortunately, at home I cannot use my tube amp. So that's why I use this modelling amp here, because the distortion still sounds great even at relatively low volumes. So it's a 2-channel amp. Firstly, the clean channel. So that's for the undistorted sounds. And here we have the lead channel. By the way, the great thing about this modelling amp is that it allows me to select different sounding amp types. They're all recreated digitally, but they're based on classic amplifier types. For example, we have Black Panel, which is a Fender amp. Brit Combo, a Vox amp. Or Tweed, which is another Fender amp. Stack Classic is modelled on the Marshall Classic. Then we have a metal amp. And R-Fire. This is a simulation of a Mesa Boogie rectifier, an amp that's very well suited for high gain sounds. The lead channel is regulated with gain to control the distortion amount. Let me demonstrate it with this Stack Classic. And the volume knob for the overall volume. We also have a 3-band tone control, bass, middle and treble for controlling low frequencies, medium frequencies and high frequencies. Here are the effects. I'll just turn it back to another amplifier first. So you can use this knob to control 4 effects. If you turn it all the way to the left, then the effects are off. If you turn it up a little bit, you get a chorus effect. Turn it a little bit more, you get a flanger. In the halfway position, I get a phaser effect. And finally, we get a tremolo effect. I can use this knob to adjust the reverb or delay effect. So that's all the way to the left, so the effect is off. Here's the delay or echo effect. And here is the hall or room effect. So let's say I want to set up a sound now. Let's choose Hell's Bells by AC/DC, for example. So with this amplifier, the first thing I need to look for is the correct amp model. I'm going to choose the Marshall Simulation Stack Classic because it should be just right for this song. The first thing I want to focus on is the distortion amount. So I'm going to play the lick. So straight away I've noticed that it's too distorted right now, so I'm going to set the distortion level a bit lower at the 9 o'clock position. By the way, when setting the distortion, I leave all of the EQ settings in the middle and all effects off. So that's closer to the amount of distortion I want, but I could use a bit more. So, what I'm going to focus on now is the sound. My feeling is that it could use a bit more middle, a bit less bass, and a bit more treble. So then I add some effects. I'm not going to need the chorus, flanger, phaser or tremolo, but I could use a little reverb. However, I'm only going to use a very small amount. I always set up my reverb playing empty, muted strings first. So now it's way too much reverb, so I'm going to dial the knob back to between 1 and 2 o'clock.